Hi, my name is Paddy Hirsch. I'm a senior editor at Marketplace. Here at Marketplace, in our coverage of the financial crisis, we've been calling it Fallout. That's the title we've been using. A lot of people have asked me, why Fallout? Is that an appropriate name? So I want to explain what the thinking behind that is. Over the last 20 years or so, Wall Street, in fact various financial centres throughout the world, have been kind of inadvertently creating an explosive condition, or were inadvertently creating an explosive condition. If you think about a silo in which you might keep toxic waste, for example, or ammunition, the ammunition that has kind of fueled Wall Street's boom over the last sort of 20 years, in many ways has been, well, there have been two sort of elements to it. The first has been securitization, and the second has been leverage. Let me just say up front that securitization and leverage on their own are not bad things. In fact, securitization's made a lot of people a lot of money, and initially it's a very smart thing to do. You take a bundle of assets and you make money out of them, and that generates interest in creating the assets. That is to say, generating loans, and people are able to make money off that. So in its essence, securitization isn't a bad idea, and there are plenty of other types of vehicles apart from CDOs that we've had problems with that have done very well with securitization for years and years, whether it be collateralized loan obligations or asset-backed securities that use car loans or student loans. Leverage is also a very, at its base, in its base form, is a benign instrument, although if it's used poorly, as it has been in the recent past, then it can be less than benign. But leverage has been used by companies for generations, ever since money was created, probably. You borrow in order to get something. You borrow to buy other companies. You borrow to expand in certain areas. So leverage inherently is not a bad thing. But too much securitization and too much leverage and too much of a combination of the two have created problems. So securitization has been around for a long time, as I said, and so Wall Street's have had asset-backed securities and CLOs and CBOs, collateralized bond obligations, and collateralized mortgage-backed securities. For years they've been creating these products. But then we got into the use of leverage to juice returns, to buy more assets, to put them into these vehicles, and we talked about, we have another example of what a CDO is and what securitization is in another video if you want to have a look at that. But so the combination of securitization and leverage created a lot more of these things, CDOs. And some of these were derivatives of these derivative and then derivatives of the derivative, called CDO squared and CDO cubed. So this silo is now filling up with these CDOs, many of which, in fact, a vast majority of which, you might say, maybe not a majority, but many of which were connected to mortgages. And of course, with mortgages, so this is turning into a fairly hefty silo full of stuff, a lot of which has the potential to be pretty toxic, as we've seen. What they did is they put a timer on this, and the timer is in the form of the adjustable rate mortgage. Different types of adjustable rate mortgages with a starter date, or a starter percentage, and then after a certain period of time it increases to a much larger percentage in many cases. And when those mortgages started to go up, when the adjustable part of it kicked in, then it basically lit the blue touch paper inside this bomb. And eventually what happened was, over actually a comparatively short period of time, maybe a year or so, this bomb went off in a very, very big way. You had this kind of spiral effect where people would default on loans, so the CDO would blow up, and then the CDO squared would blow up, and the CDO that was based on that would blow up, and suddenly people were losing money hand over fist, and then the whole system of credit default swaps, which had linked everybody together, started to drag everybody down, and you had this massive explosion, which we saw whenever Lehman Brothers was terminated. Went down like a stone. Not just Lehman Brothers, of course, either. AIG nearly went down. All of the big investment banks had to become, because they were in such bad shape, had to become commercial banks. And Bear Stearns disappeared. Now, when you talk about fallout, people think of a nuclear bomb. And this is part of the reason that we've used this phrase, because when a nuclear bomb goes off, it's very obvious. There's an enormous flash. The second thing that happens is you have this monstrous mushroom cloud that goes up. So here's our mushroom cloud. All right? And the immediate effects are a ripple effect of damage throughout the area close to the seat of the explosion. This ripple effect went right the way around Wall Street, knocked down a bunch of the investment banks, really endangered insurance companies, and started to pull other companies along with it. So you had this sort of cloud, this crash of devastation in the immediate area of around the financial centers of the world. And it was very, very obvious to anyone who saw it. Firstly, the headlines. Bear Stearns goes under, Lehman Brothers goes under, AIG about to fail. Investment banks become commercial banks. And then so that's the flash. And then you see the enormous mushroom cloud that goes up, and again, more media coverage. Other types of financial institutions in trouble. Credit default swaps started to pull people down. So you have this. So the media coverage was very, very obvious. So hence your mushroom cloud, hence your explosion. Of course, once this dies down, what you have is an enormous area of rubble, and that's what we're seeing. In Wall Street right now, it's an absolute wreck. These investment banks are gone. I mean, they've just been wiped out and become something completely different. But what is also happening at this point in a nuclear explosion, after the initial explosion goes off, is that we start to see fallout coming down. Now you don't see it, and that's the danger of fallout. Some of it you can see, and some of it you can't see. It comes down. And anybody who knows anything about nuclear explosions knows that it covers a much, much wider area than just the original seat of the explosion. As we say, some of it's obvious and some of it can be seen. And if you want to look at that in terms of the economy, you can see it in terms of the erosion of the Fed's balance sheet, the fact that we're leveraging up in the Fed, the fact that people are losing their jobs, the fact that General Motors has to go to the government and ask for on bended knee and ask for money. So we're seeing the repercussions. We're seeing the obvious fallout right now. But fallout also falls without people seeing it, and it covers an enormous area that we don't necessarily know about. And this is the point this is why fallout is such an appropriate name for our coverage, because fallout can keep falling from the sky for many, many months, and I think we know that we're going to be seeing the effects, the immediate effects of this fallout in the American economy as we track this story, right the way through the next couple of years. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing people losing jobs. We're already hearing about people unable to get credit, unable to build their businesses. We're hearing about food prices being a problem for many people. We're seeing demand for commodities slumping because people can't afford to pay for them. So we're seeing the immediate repercussions of this fallout. The other thing about fallout is that in many cases you don't know exactly what it's doing when it's doing it, and sometimes the effects don't become apparent for generations, well, not for generations, but for years. Anyone who's a student of nuclear explosions at the end of the Second World War knows that some of the damage wasn't manifest for years and years afterwards. So once again, an appropriate name for what has happened on Wall Street and the way we're covering the effects of what happened on Wall Street is fallout, because it's going to be affecting us for years to come, and it may be some time before it becomes absolutely clear what has actually happened and how this is affecting us in the long term.